Some locomotives, such as the LMS Black 5, were built to fulfill a wide range of tasks, while others were designed for one very specific purpose and nothing else. The latter is what we see with the newest train simulator add-on released by Caledonia Works, namely the Midland Railway 010 number 2290, also known as the Lickey Banker or Big Bertha. Now that I think about it, after pottering about with the smaller Great Eastern Y14 tender engine, which was supplied in ultramarine and a few other smart colours, one could say that, with Big Bertha, we're back in black. But first, a brief history on Big Bertha. She was built at Derby Works in 1919, having been designed by James Anderson specifically for banking trains up the notorious Lickey Incline. That's a 2-mile-long section of 1 in 37 between Bromsgrove and Blackwell, around 14 miles southwest of Birmingham, and it's going uphill in the northbound direction towards Blackwell. Big Bertha was a most unique locomotive, featuring an 010 wheel arrangement, 4 large cylinders and a tender cab, the latter being very important for crew comfort as the locomotive spent half of her time running tender leading down the hill. She was dispatched to Bromsgrove in January 1920, and would call Bromsgrove home for her entire working life, apart from occasional visits back to Derby for overhaul, as well as trials on coal trains between Towton and North London in 1924. But the trials were not a success because the locomotive was designed for short bursts of hard work, rather than sustained high power output. Another notable aspect of Big Bertha is her status as one of only 2 010 locomotives ever to run in Britain, the other one being the Great Eastern Railway A55 tank engine. Incidentally, there was also an 010 in the United States built specifically for banking trains, and that locomotive is called Reuben Wells. Big Bertha's cylinder arrangement was unusual, in the sense that there were no piston valves for the inside cylinders, due to insufficient space for piston valves under the smokebox, so the outside piston valves also supplied the inside cylinders, doing so via crossover steam ports, whatever that means. Of course, one can't forget the Lickey Banker's electric headlight, which was fitted in 1923 to help crews judge distances when they would be coupling up to a train at night. However, some banker crews didn't use the headlight as it made the crew up front, in the leading engine, aware of Bertha's presence, thus attempting them to let the 010 take more than her fair share of the work up to Blackwell. To add, Bertha started out with a steam-operated lever reverser, but this was replaced by a manual screw reverser in the 1930s. The Midland Railway became part of the London, Midland and Scottish Railway in 1923, and the Big 010 continued banking trains up the Lickey Incline for many years. The LMS eventually renumbered her as 22290 in 1947, and she would be renumbered again upon the formation of British Railways, now becoming 58100. Curiously, neither the LMS nor BR ever gave this locomotive a power classification, and one wonders what it would have been, given her tractive effort of 43,313 pounds-force. Over the years, other locomotives, including LMS Ginty tank engines, GWR 9400 pannier tanks, and even the LNER U1 Garrett, would also be assigned to banking duties on the Lickey Incline. Bertha was withdrawn in 1956 with an impressive 838,856 miles on the clock, but sadly, her story doesn't have a happy ending, as she was cut up for scrap in 1957. Bertha's position as Lickey banker was taken up by a standard 9F class 210 tender engine, specifically number 92079, who was given the headlight from her predecessor. Sadly, 92079 would be withdrawn in 1967, at just 11 years old, and apparently, the last steam locomotive to assist a train on the Lickey and BR days was 6947 Helmingham Hall, a 460 originally from the Great Western Railway. These days, the Lickey Incline is electrified, following the extension of Cross-City Line electrification down to Bromsgrove in 2018, and now you'll see a mix of diesel and electric trains running up and down the hill, with occasional steam excursions to boot. Apparently, Class 66 diesel locomotives are sometimes used to bank trains on the incline these days. Big Bertha is one locomotive in particular that has stuck out in my mind for many years, but I never thought she would come to TS Classic. Regardless, CW released the locomotive as a TS add-on on the 12th of July 2026, and she's available from their website for £17, or around 41 New Zealand dollars, at full price. Throughout her service life, the locomotive didn't wear many liveries, and the selection included with the add-on is as follows: Midland Railway Black, LMS Black 1926 to 1928, LMS Black 1928 to 1937, LMS Black 1937 to 1948, which differs only from the previous variant by way of having a screw reverser instead of a steam reverser, LMS/BR Black 1948, and BR Lined Black 1948 to 1956. This engine never ran with the late crest. One of the first things I noticed when looking at the model in-game was the angle of the firebox's top edge, pointing down towards the cab. This is accurate, if photographs of the real thing are anything to go by. File size for the Bertha pack is 920 megabytes, as opposed to over 3 gigabytes that we saw with the LNER J15, although that was due to the larger number of variants in the J15 pack. It'll be interesting to see if anyone makes reskins for Big Bertha, and personally, I wouldn't mind seeing her done up in LMS Crimson Lake, or something even more cursed, such as Highland Railway Yellow. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Big Bertha also comes with a large selection of freight wagons, in Midland, LMS and BR guises. Although they appear to be the same wagons as what is also supplied in the LMS 4F and S&DJR 7F packs. Speaking of that 280 tender engine, does anyone else think that Bertha looks a little bit like the 7F's large boiler variant? Either that, or a hybrid of the S&D 7F and LMS 7F 080. Bertha makes use of SimNation's Locomotion 2.0 scripting, which has been around since 2023, if I remember rightly. Her features are consistent with what you can expect from the most recent CW products, with the list including, but not being limited to, scripted tender tank and water level, with water visible sloshing about inside, scripted steam brakes, reminiscent of the LNER J15, J36 and J72 that I've looked at in previous videos, the presence of a screw reverser on the post-1937 variants, customizable headlamp arrangement on both the locomotive and tender, with period-accurate Midland or LMS-style lamps, realistic performance physics, realistic steam chest simulation, which can be disabled if you hit Ctrl-A to go to simple mode, adjustable safety valve volume, which is lowered with Shift, and raised with comma, cab lighting effects, and fire intensity synchronized with the exhaust beat. As for any customizable details on Big Bertha, the only option this time is the smokebox door burnishings, with 3 styles to choose from. This engine has quick-drive consists for each of her 6 variants, with a consistent pattern of only 2 options for a consist behind each engine. One is with a long freight train, and the other just has a brake van, and is labelled as light engine. No other add-ons are required for the quick-drive consists, as they only use the wagons included with Bertha. This means that you don't need to pick up any other rolling stock packs if you just want to jump straight in and take the locomotive for a spin. Incidentally, I swear that this locomotive's whistle sounds the same as what I remember hearing on a previous CW product, though I can't remember which one. There's not much I can think of when it comes to things I would suggest for improvement, but one thing I'd like to see is the addition of a cab camera view in the centre of the footplate, and zoomed out to show all the controls at once. Despite knowing what Bertha was designed for, I was still curious to see how she would perform on a passenger train, so I set up a test run from Maxwelltown to Kirkcudbright on the Western Lines of Scotland route. I have no idea what that terrier is doing here, or why I changed her name to Veg. In any case, Bertha was hauling 5 LMS Period 3 coaches. These are the Period 3s that come with CW's Princess Royal pack. In real life, Bertha wasn't used on passenger trains as she was never fitted with vacuum brakes, and only had steam brakes along with 1 handbrake each for the locomotive and a tender. Before going any further, there's a few more things about Bertha that I wanted to mention. The headlight is indeed functional, and can be switched on and off via the steam generator valve, thus being very reminiscent of the New Zealand Railway's JA and KB steam locomotives, who also have electric headlights. In Bertha's case, the valve is located just below the fireman's injector on the left-hand side of the footplate. According to the manual, Bertha's ideal fire mass is around 880 pounds for mainline running and 810 pounds for casual shunting. It's very important to top up the fire mass frequently, as Bertha has quite the appetite for coal, although I believe that is by design. When you're driving CW engines in general, not just Bertha, it's always a good idea to have the dampers open the whole time, as these help with steam generation by letting fresh air into the firebox. I was surprised when I learnt that Bertha's maximum boiler pressure was only 180 psi, since I thought it would be somewhere around 200 or higher. In any case, and as for how she performed on this run to Kirkcudbright, she was up to around 20 miles per hour before reaching the foot of the climb out of Maxwelltown, and continued accelerating on the 1 in 93 up to the junction for the ICI chemical plant. Once on the 1 in 72, I found that she was content to cruise along with the regulator at around 75% and reverser at 32% cutoff. Those were the readings as I saw them on the F4 heads-up display. She maintained a steady 36 miles per hour on the rest of the climb up to Locomotive, and once over the crest of the hill, I decided to stop at Locomotive station for a while and let Bertha get her breath back, in a manner of speaking. Once on the move again, I thought I'd see just how fast Bertha could go, and managed to get her up to at least 48 miles per hour. But once you're above around 40, you pretty much have to constantly shovel coal on the fire and top up the boiler water level due to the engine's large appetite, so to speak. All things considered, I think she still performed well considering how different this run was from what she was specifically designed for. In closing, and with all things considered, I am of the opinion that Big Bertha is at the complete opposite end of the quality spectrum from the Deutsche Bundesbahn BR10 that Romantic Railroads made. Of course, I mean this as a compliment to Chris and his team's work on Bertha. This absolute unit of a locomotive presents reasonable value for money and all, given the inclusion of that big wagon pack, not to mention the price being lower than normal for CW products. If my test runs for this video were anything to go by, Bertha does well when it comes to banking trains on steep inclines, as she should, and while she's far from being the fastest locomotive in the world, it can still be fun, or challenging, to screw around with this thing on other routes. As for a rating, I think Big Bertha, the Lickey banker, deserves 8.5 out of 10, and if you've stuck around to the end of the video, you win a bright green van with St. John branding that transports injured sheep to hospital. It's a lambulance,